Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It is the 15th of March. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that with your NOAA Weather Radio, NOAA radio on a Marine VHF. Of course, the weather info line is open at 800-472-0391. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube in the afternoon. And if you're searching the internet, look for AKwx. That's a sign that people are talking about Alaska weather. And after this show, you can go to youtube.com and in the search bar there, type in AKwx TV, and you'll find the complete broadcast of what we're talking about right now. Here's a look at the hazardous weather, and we have winter weather advisories across the Alaska Range all the way from Tok down into Denali, the Susitna Valley, and the Matanuska Valley. Now, each one of these has slightly different snowfall expectations as we go into tonight and tomorrow. Let's start in the Matanuska Valley. For areas from Palmer northward, we're expecting about 4 to 7 inches of snow, the highest along the mountains there. Snow is falling around Palmer and in the Eagle River area. We're expecting lower amounts of snow around the eastern side of Anchorage, predominantly in the hillside and perhaps up to Eagle River as well. But we're not really looking at any significant snowfall to fall further westward at this point. The one thing that we are watching, though, is for the band of snow to set up along the Chugach. And this will probably wobble around a little bit depending on exactly where that heavier and more persistent band sets up. Could make the difference between snow falling down in downtown Anchorage versus mostly on the hillside. Right now it looks like it's going to be mostly on the hillside and in the mountains. And again, that's going to affect areas generally from Palmer northward. Now from Talkeetna northward, we're also expecting snow to fall. A winter weather advisory is posted there until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And for Talkeetna northward into the park, we expect about 4 to 8 inches of snow. Go a little bit further up into the Denali area. And in these regions, we could be talking about 6 to 10 inches of snow. And that possibility extends into the eastern Alaska Range as well. 6 to 10 inches of snow is something that's certainly possible to slow down the traffic a little bit if you're driving through some of the passes and certainly up the park's highway. So take it easy, plan accordingly, and be prepared for weather to change a little bit more as you head through the rest of tonight into early tomorrow morning and throughout at least midday tomorrow before the plows can get a handle on some of the conditions there in South Central. Now up north, a winter weather advisory is posted for blowing and drifting snow, generally through some of the passes there. We're watching for winds to blow out of the north about 30 miles per hour or so. That could drop visibility down below 1 mile at times. Not expecting a whole lot of new snow to fall, but with the winds blowing around, it could lower visibility there and shift some of the snow onto roads or make it a little bit more difficult to see where you're going when you're out motoring around out there, so be extra careful. Here's a look at the weather situation across South Central tonight. You'll notice we're not really expecting that heavier snow amount right now to be focused in the Anchorage or the Wasilla area. The best chance for accumulating snow is going to be up around the Talkeetnas and northward of Talkeetna itself, and then north and east of Palmer. We do expect some snowfall across some of the hillside there east of Anchorage and also west and north of Talkeetna. So we're watching for about 4 to 8 inches in that direction, 4 to 7 around the Palmer area and northward, with snow coming to places like Valdez soon as well. Here's a look at the weather setup now. Low pressure has focused itself right across the heart of Alaska, all the way down into the northern Gulf. And in this area, it's kind of a weakness in the atmosphere. It's allowing that lift and the clouds to bubble up and form into kind of a little bit more of a snow machine than some of us have seen in quite some time for South Central and maybe even the interior as well. Fairbanks looking at about 1 inch of snow in the next 24 hours or so. Southeast conditions are kind of hit and miss right now, seeing a little bit of light rain in a few spots. There is a weak area of low pressures hovering a little bit closer to your area between Yakutat and Sitka, but there's also a wealth of dry air across the eastern Gulf of Alaska at this point. Out across the west, this big, bright, white shield coming in from the west is the next powerful storm working out of the North Pacific. That is going to focus its efforts on areas west of AKwx in the next 24 hours, watching for gales and even storm force winds to develop as we head into Wednesday. And if you look out to the west, a sign of change there for sure is this tight packing of the pressure gradient there from Kiska to Attu. To slow that down just a little bit, this isn't just going to make a rapid rush into the Bering Sea over the next couple days. We have high pressure that's really trying to hold things back and slow it down. That's doing two things. First, it's slowing it down. The other part of that is that it's allowing the low pressure to have to deepen and strengthen a little bit so it can overcome this wall that's kind of slowing it down. It's high pressure all the way across the North Slope and across the Gulf of Anadyr and then southward into the southern Bering Sea. In the meantime, low pressure is also stirring up across the northern Gulf at 1,000 millibars there. Also south of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, Nikolsky and Sandpoint at 1,004 millibars. Some areas of light snow there for Dutch Harbor and Unalaska. You can see the clouds building over the Pribilofs. Not a whole lot of precipitation occurring right in here, but it looks like once some of that hits the chain, we're certainly squeezing out a few flakes. Some light snow is reported around Dillingham, northward up to Kotzebue Sound, and then hit and miss around the Fairbanks region, southward toward the Park area as well as north of Talkeetna, and we expect snow to continue to fill in here across some of the higher terrain and from Palmer northward and east of Anchorage and Eagle River through the rest of tonight. Watch for snow to start forming in Prince William Sound as we go as well. Some pockets of light rain on the north and south ends of the Panhandle this afternoon and this evening. As we look at the rest of tonight, watch for the snow level to start descending around the capital city, probably around 500 feet or so. So that could mean snow for some places there in northern sections of southeast. Rain along the outer coast and into Prince William Sound. A better chance that will start to mix in with snow a little bit. Snowfall expected from Talkeetna northward and across the Alaska Range, again with winter weather advisories posted through tonight and early tomorrow. 6 to 10 inches of snow in the mountains and around Denali and Healy. Northward, we get into a little bit of a drier situation, and with the wind there, some of that snow could be blowing around. Not expecting as much of accumulation along the Brooks Range summits and northward as we are for that just to be blowing around. Once you get out to Norton Sound and southwestern Alaska, things are pretty dry there. The breezes will still be blowing around southwest, but it looks like high pressure will dominate your weather picture across the Bering Strait through St. Lawrence Island and Nunivak Island out toward Bristol Bay. Watch for some areas of light snow around the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island there. Rain and snow will continue to mix around the Valdez region. Changes are expected around Thompson Pass. And then as you look northward, snow is still possible generally north of the Susitna Valley and up through the Matanuska Valley, which snow continuing on and off around the Anchorage area, though again most of that's expected to be in the hills. Pockets of rainfall for southeast are expected there on Wednesday as snow levels go back up. And then out in the west, we start to see our first glimpse of what the storm is going to look like there. Storm force winds are expected from Kiska to Attu. 971 millibar low there just south and west of Attu, with rain and snow on the south side, but there's certainly enough cold air and enough moisture that most of what we'll see there across the chain from Adak and westward all the way into the Kamchatka Peninsula will probably be snowfall there. As we get into Thursday, the system is moving northward quickly at 986 millibars. The front extends a little bit further east and south, and as that travels into the western Bering Sea, a lot of this is going to break up, and that encourages the dry air to continue flowing off the continent. We'll see clouds as far south and west as Ambler and out toward Galena, but then things really start to break up as you get out into Norton Sound and Nome and St. Lawrence Island all the way out to Cape Newenham. Dillingham, and then when you get back toward King Salmon and Lake Iliamna, conditions start to become a little more cloudy there. The next wave of warmer and wetter air is working across the Gulf. This is going to bring some rain and snow across Kodiak Island. A better chance that the further north this goes, this will be a little bit more snow for Prince William Sound and the Kenai Peninsula. But that will probably change a little bit as we go into Thursday and Friday. This line, don't focus on this very hard and fast line. Some of this very wet and warm air could certainly sneak its way into Prince William Sound. That will travel as far north as the northern sections of southeast, Juneau out toward Gustavus, Cross Sound, and then toward Yakutat. But south of that, conditions should start to improve. You'll see more clouds and precipitation as we get toward the end of Thursday. In the meantime, high pressure is sitting up across the Chukchi Sea at 1,045 millibars. You'll notice that very tight pressure gradient we've been watching across the North Slope seems to have eased up a little bit. There will still be an opportunity for some light snowfall, maybe snow showers east of Point Barrow to Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, all the way out toward AKwx. But generally speaking, it looks like the best chance for that to occur will be right along the coast there, following this trough of low pressure setting up across Eagle northward along the Alcan border. That's a look at Thursday there, and conditions will probably change a little bit and shift that eastward as we head into Friday. Let's take a look at the temperatures today across southeast. 30s and 40s there. Plenty of clouds from Sitka at 38 degrees, the capital city, and Juneau 40 there, around 40 degrees near the Dixon entrance. Prince William Sound saw temperatures in the lower 40s for both Cordova and Valdez, and also down the coast towards Seward and Homer. 37 in Kenai. It was 40 in Anchorage today. 34 around 2 o'clock for Talkeetna. In Denali, only 11 today, 16 in Fairbanks with 18 around Eagle, 25 in Northway, a little warmer for you, 10 in Fort Yukon. The Arctic coast saw temps ranging from 5 below in Point Barrow to 10 below in AKwx, 18 below for Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, 20 below as you head down toward Point Lay. Point Hope was a little bit milder there. Single-digit temps above zero for Kivalina and Kotzebue. Shishmaref had 7 above. Nome, a big party there at 9 degrees. 8 below, or 8 above, I should say, for Unalakleet, 13 above for Galena, 16 in Grayling, and it looked like 16 as well for McGrath. 13 above for Bethel today. Bristol Bay temperatures generally in the 20s and 30s. The Alaska Peninsula saw temperatures just below 40 degrees today. Sandpoint was 37. Mid-20s for St. Paul and St. George, holding it freezing for Adak and Atka, and Shemmy was showing 28. Overnight low temperatures will stay above zero for Fairbanks all the way down the parks into the Susitna Valley and south central. 20s for most areas there. Mid to upper 30s for southeast. 20s and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. 19 in St. George and St. Paul. Look for 1 below around Bethel. 9 below in Nome, and 23 to 25 below. Some of the colder weather there up around the Arctic coast for Wainwright, Barrow, and Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse down to 31 below. A high tomorrow of 18 below, so there is some warming if you want to dare call it that. Upper teens for the middle Tanana Valley to Northway and Eagle, in the upper 20s to about 30. South Central goes above freezing by the afternoon. 40 in Kodiak, and low to mid 40s for southeast, including Ketchikan, Klawock, and Hyder. A look for temperatures in the chain to hold in the mid 30s tomorrow. St. Paul looking at 29, Nunivak Island 15, and Nome expect a high of 9 degrees there to welcome more teams coming in. Your flying weather shows areas of IFR as we would expect, with snow falling throughout the day across the Susitna Valley and into parts of the Matanuska Valley, though the IFR conditions will be shifting eastward throughout the day, and improvement should be noted across the Cook Inlet and Shelikof Strait region. And this is the morning view again. Also look at the IFR conditions across the eastern Brooks Range and across the western chain. By the afternoon, conditions should spread IFR into the eastern and probably northern sections of the Gulf, including Prince William Sound. But notice the improvements here around Cook Inlet and also across the western and central chain. IFR conditions along the frontal boundary tracking east, and IFR is expected to develop across some parts of the upper Yukon Valley, with MVFR holding around parts of the Arctic coast. Southeast looking pretty good by tomorrow afternoon. Here's your pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions through most of your Wednesday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass look A-OK as far as visibility goes. Rainy Pass, visual flight rules expected there. Windy Pass, we'll see some improvements, but a start at IFR should be expected. And the same goes for Isabel Pass tomorrow. MVFR is expected by the afternoon. Mentasta Pass right now looks to be okay. VFR conditions for your Wednesday. Tanita Pass should see improvements as well. Probably MVFR at least by the afternoon, if not complete improvement. Portage Pass we're going to call IFR because of the eastern side there and snow falling in Prince William Sound. And Chilkoot and White Pass looks to have improvements up to VFR by the end of the day. Here's a look at freezing levels, and as you would expect, that warm and wet air is still holding across the eastern Gulf, running around 2,000 feet. That goes from about Sitka into the Dixon entrance there across Haida Gwaii. The surface freezing line holding across the central chain, and a hint of warmer air across the North Pacific with that next weather system moving north. Icing potential certainly there, especially above 4,000 feet, and that'll go for the Anchorage area around Turnagain Arm, Prince William Sound, and northward into the upper Yukon Valley and the south side of the Brooks Range. Look for that to reach as high as isolated moderate, and not across the western chain. Isolated moderates possible there from Kiska and westward. The jet stream shows a pretty normal pattern, although it's shifted a little bit east since we last talked. The low pressure sitting across the Kamchatka Peninsula feeding in that storm energy, but it takes a detour high north into the Bering Strait and then southward once again. That's feeding in cold air and storm energy into the Gulf of Alaska. And with this weakness holding across the central parts of Alaska, we have the potential for snow in some places where we haven't seen it for a while this season. Winds pick up pretty quickly once they get back into the weather pattern here at 115 knots and then slowing into 80 knots across the west coast. At 9,000 feet, you can see our weakness here. Low pressure sitting across the middle Yukon Valley, a northwesterly flow coming out of the Chukchi with stronger southerlies across the western Bering at 50 to 60 knots, and high pressure trying to hold ground across western and central Canada. Southerlies react to that with winds coming in off the ocean at 20 to 30 knots at most places. 3,000 feet, you can see our low pressure system here. Northerlies coming down the west coast, 15 to as strong as 45 knots in the western Gulf, and again, our much stronger flow across the western Bering. For southeast, wind speeds there around 10 to 20 knots. Turbulence potential is really going to focus out across the west, generally below 4,000 feet, with most areas experiencing occasional moderate by the end of the day, thanks to storm force winds cranking up across the western chain as we go throughout your Wednesday. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with your marine weather here in just a few minutes. Good evening, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined again by Eric Stevens of GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Eric, thanks so much for joining us again tonight.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks, Eric. And we've been talking about the complex gathering of information from satellites, looking down on the surface of the planet, and some of those orbits around the planet work for Alaska and some of them don't. There's a lot of challenges with those. How can we get better imagery for the poles and specifically for Alaska?
Right. Well, today we're going to talk about a very interesting kind of satellite orbit that has potential to be real helpful for the high latitudes. Okay. Especially us here in Alaska. Canadians, Russians, Norwegians will all be interested in this. The satellites are not in orbit yet. Now the future is uncertain, but it's possible, and if this happens, it will be wonderful for Alaska. Okay. It's called the highly elliptical orbit. Oh, it's interesting. Yeah. And I think first, to help our discussion, we should get back to some of Kepler's laws and how do satellites work. Sure. Kepler's first law, an orbit of a planet around a sun or a weather satellite around the Earth is not necessarily a circle, it's an ellipse. Okay. And the highly elliptical orbit takes advantage of this aspect. We're going to put the Earth in one of the ellipse and then stretch one of the foci of the ellipse and then stretch that ellipse out real far to make it highly elliptical.
The foci is that bend part of the end of the ellipse. If you're going to stretch out a rubber band, that would be the center, kind of the stretchy part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then Kepler's second law says that the closer something is to the thing that it's orbiting, the faster it goes. Okay. We see this in the solar system, that Mercury flies around the sun real fast. Jupiter, much slower. Jupiter's further away, it's slower. Mercury's closer in, it's faster. This happens with weather satellites too. Even satellites like the International Space Station, it's pretty close to the Earth. It goes around the Earth in only 90 minutes. That thing is moving. It's only 250 miles away. So how can we take advantage of these two aspects of Kepler's laws of motion to get better weather surveillance of Alaska? And this highly elliptical orbit is going to be the approach. So we have with us today our friendly planet Earth and our simulated satellite, the lid off of this salt shaker
like
here.
Sputnik there. Yeah.
There it is. It's shiny, it's metal, it's space worthy. And what we want to be able to do is, could you have a satellite hover over the top of the world, up over Alaska? You can't really do that. Geostationary satellites have to be over the equator. Okay. So how could we almost solve this? And this is the tricky part. Maybe should we tilt the Earth over?
Focus on the pole. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, right?
So here we have the northern side of the planet, and we're going to trace out the orbit of a satellite with this salt shaker lid here. Now imagine a highly elliptical orbit. So let's put the Earth in one of the foci of the ellipse, and we'll have an imaginary foci out here. So the satellite will not go in a circle around the Earth, but will be in this long strung out ellipse. So the satellite will go...
Kind of like a racetrack.
Yes, there you go, like a racetrack. So it's an oval elliptical shape like that. And notice now that when the satellite's over here, we've got a nice view of the northern hemisphere around. There's Alaska, Russia, Canada, Greenland, all there. So that's the ellipse aspect of an orbit, Kepler's first law. The second law saying that when you're further away as a satellite, you go slower. And this we can take real advantage of. Because the way this orbit works, when the satellite goes over Antarctica here, it's going to be close to the Earth. It's going to be moving, whoosh, goes on by. And then as it comes out here, it will slow down. This increases what is known as the dwell time. The satellite will just hang here looking for hours at Alaska and the high Arctic. And then eventually it will come around and it will accelerate and whiz around the South Pole and then come back and hang here for a while because it's further away from the planet. It goes slower. It has to. That's the laws of motion. And such like that, repeating.
Wow.
Now the real important way to make this work is you have to have two satellites. So that while one is whipping around the pole, you've got the other one out here, and they work as a team. You could then get a series of images of Alaska that can be almost from a constant frame of reference, and you can loop them together to make movies. You can take a picture every 10 minutes, say, of Alaska, and then loop it, playing it at several frames a second. You could see the clouds whiz on by. You know, the Weather Channel, weather broadcasters in the lower 48 especially can show these movie loops from the geostationary satellites. In Alaska, we've never really been able to do that very well, especially in the higher, most northern parts of the state, because those geostationary satellites are over the equator. It's not a good view. And this highly elliptical orbit whipping around the South Pole and then dwelling up here would be a way for us to get that constant frame of reference and do really good weather surveillance over the Arctic, seeing where those storms are, where they're going. Nothing quite like a movie loop of the weather in time to really illustrate what's important, what's going on.
And compared to what we have right now, we just have small windows or snapshots of what's going on with the polar orbiters. We don't have that long range view that's looking top down to give us that complete motion picture that helps us understand so much of the atmosphere at this
There's
point.
so many different kinds of satellites. Each has their advantage. Each is important, and the highly elliptical orbit satellite will also fit into that scheme. It's a nifty idea to solve an Alaskan challenge.
That's fantastic. Well, that sounds really exciting. And again, kind of a satellite dream of the future to come. Okay, very good. Thanks for joining us today, Eric. We really appreciate the information. And if you'd like to learn more about what Eric does at GINA, at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, we invite you to visit the web address that you see on your screen there. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. Thanks, Other Dave. Here's a look at the sea ice edge now, and you notice very little change since the last time we talked last week. You can see the bright white here. That is concentrations higher than 80%. The blue thin ribbon that kind of hovers along the south edge of that is concentrations of about 20 to 80%. And very little change there south of St. Matthew or around Nunivak Island. Northward, some hit and miss opener spots there a little bit with lower concentrations, but not a big change since last week. The weather.gov/Anchorage/ice.php is a place to go where you can check out two different types of maps and move it around to where you want, and then click on the ice areas that you're interested in to get the forecast information, the concentration, and again, how thick that ice is. All that makes a big difference in your plans. Here's a look at the weather in southeast now. Southeasterlies around 10 to 15 knots coming in through the central and southern parts of the inner channels. 2 to 3 foot seas there. Southerlies in the Lynn Canal at 15 knots with a 3 foot sea. Light winds on the northern outer coast. A little bit of a stronger southwesterly flow south of Sitka from 20 to 25. And looking for 10 foot seas there on Wednesday. The flow shifts to more of a southeasterly direction along the outer coast for Thursday. 20 knots there along the outside. 7 to 8 foot seas down the outer coast until you get to about Craig and the Dixon entrance where you're looking for 6 foot seas there. For the Clarence Strait, 4 foot seas on a 20 knot wind, and south and southeasterlies around 15 knots through the middle and the upper inner channels there at 15 knots into the Lynn Canal as well. Southeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound with a light breeze. You get 3 foot seas expected. And look at the westerlies. This is important for snow production. Those winds coming into the Chugach Range helping to lift that wet air and make snow clouds, at least late in the season, right? It should be pretty, hopefully where you are. Westerlies across the Barrens at 25, 6 foot seas there, becoming northwesterlies as they head out into the Gulf, and westerlies over Kodiak Island, 15 knots from the north and west. Over the Shelikof Strait region, 3 foot seas there, becoming northeasterly as we head into Thursday. And look at the northerlies coming down Cook Inlet by Thursday afternoon, ending the snow chances and hopefully improving your flying and sailing weather if you need to. Northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound and a broad east to northeasterly flow across the north and western Gulf. Some of the stronger winds east of Kodiak Island at 35 knots. Across the Alaska Peninsula and inside Bristol Bay, we get 15 knots with a 3-foot sea on Wednesday. That picks up a little bit more down the coast. North and westerly winds across the Pacific coast with 5 to 6-foot seas on a 15-knot wind for Wednesday. Becoming northeasterly and stronger up to gales, 14-foot seas there for Thursday. Northeasterlies from Bristol Bay southward with a 6 to 9-foot sea there on Thursday afternoon. And for the Aleutians, storm force winds from AKwx westward through Kiska into Shemya, 50 knots there with 20 to 25-foot seas there for Wednesday afternoon. The seas and the winds rapidly diminish as you head eastward. Look for easterlies coming across Unalaska Nikolsky at 15 knots, becoming 25 though as you head into Thursday. With the winds changing around here in the central chain, look for southeasterlies on the Bering Sea coast, becoming southwesterlies from AKwx westward and then south of the central Aleutians as well, with 19-foot seas building in. 24 to 28-foot seas expected from Kiska to Attu, and we'll watch for higher gusts to continue as we head into Thursday. For the west coast, northerlies coming through the Bering Strait, 15 knots over the ice, northerlies in Kuskokwim Bay with a 4-foot sea on 20-knot winds, northeasterlies for the Pribilofs, and northeasterlies as well across St. Matthew Island with 5-foot seas in the open water. Look for that to build to 15-foot seas there on an easterly wind coming up to 30 knots on Thursday. Northeasterlies coming off the continent at 15 to 25, 6-foot seas in Kuskokwim Bay, 8-foot seas for the Pribilofs on that 20-knot wind from the east on Thursday. Light westerlies moving across the Arctic coast. Most areas looking at 10 knots. Northerlies outside of Kotzebue Sound with 15-knot winds there for Wednesday, becoming westerly at 10 for Thursday. Very light winds from Point Barrow to Wainwright, 5 knots there, and a little bit of a light breeze from the east around Kaktovik with a 10-knot wind on Thursday afternoon. Recapping tonight's weather, it might snow. Wow, for South Central, there could be snow around areas northward of Talkeetna, looking for 4 to 8 inches there, 4 to 7 inches from Palmer northward into the Matanuska Valley. Winter weather advisories for both areas. Not expecting advisory level snow around the Anchorage area, but you will see snow in the higher terrain in the Chugach, on the hillside, maybe Eagle River, and watch for some snow along the highway tomorrow. Just be careful with your drive. Hit and miss rain and snow across southeast. Snow level in Juneau around 500 feet tonight, and a new storm building in across the western Aleutians with gales and storm force winds in the western chain. Have a wonderful Wednesday. See you back here tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.